Gentlemen, please silence your phones. The ceremony is about to begin. Thank you. Good morning. I am Cadet Captain Ty Miller. Welcome to the Reefs for Veterans program here at Morris Hill Cemetery, and specifically at the Veterans Field of Honor. Color Guard will now present the colors. Colors. Post.
Pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ready?
At this time, please welcome First Lieutenant Joe Jamieson for the invocation, excuse me.
I assume everybody's feet is as cold as mine. We're gathered here this morning to honor our veterans who are laid to rest here in 2 fields of honor with holiday wreaths to let them and veterans everywhere know that they are not forgotten and that the sacrifices they made are not in vain. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, sir. Now today we also have Chief Master Sergeant Pete Glick, retired Command Chief with the Idaho Air National Guard. Chief Glick has been a veteran for 38 years of service of our country. Chief Glick.
Okay, most of this, because it's cold, will not apply, but good morning, ladies and gentlemen. And thanks for enduring this weather and getting here today. 'Cause we want to honor Americans' veterans, the ones that came before us. And I know you're cold, and so I'm going to be brief. As we shiver in the cold this morning, let's be mindful of the reason we're here. To remember the sacrifices that the veterans endured during their service. Starting in 1882, the Morris Hill Cemetery here has provided a beautiful and final resting place for our veterans. Some of those are veterans of the Civil War, the Spanish-American War, World War I, World War II, and the Korean-Vietnam Wars. We're here today really in relative comfort. Our cars over here are nice and warm and they're ready for us. So let's keep that in perspective. Keep that in perspective as we remember some of those veterans at places like the Ardennes Forest in Europe, or the Chosin River in Korea, where some of those soldiers and airmen didn't have winter clothing in conditions much worse than this. They were given summer clothing in a campaign that started in the summertime. So let's remember their sacrifice and the sacrifices of their families as well, because they also endured. We should remember those families. They endured other hardships while their loved one was gone. Just 75 years ago, the United States had been recently shocked after Pearl Harbor was attacked by the Imperial Japanese Navy. Millions of Americans from all walks of life served after that attack. Many from right here in Idaho and this Treasure Valley. My own grandfather Leo served in the Navy for a short time during World War II, as I'm sure many of your relatives did as well. This was called a world war because it truly spanned every continent across this globe to include Antarctica. There are World War II veterans buried in this cemetery. Let's remember their sacrifice of those servicemen and women and their families. In just a few short months, we'll commemorate the 100th anniversary of America's entry into World War I. They fought in miserable conditions that we find unthinkable today. Mud-filled trenches, poor winter clothing, hunger, disease, death surrounded them and their horses. 2 million Americans served, and a couple of those are buried in this cemetery. Let's remember their sacrifice and that of their families. In the interest of time and temperature, I won't go into some of the other examples I brought today, but there are two that I want to mention specifically. Colonel John D. Green and Corporal Dan D. Schoonover, both recipients of the Medal of Honor, are memorialized here. I say memorialized because Corporal Schoonover did not make it home. I'd like to invite you to come back to Morris Hill when the weather is a little more agreeable and just visit this area here. Let's also spend a little time and talk about present times. We do things such as this to remember the past and the people who made a difference by the way that they spent their lives. It's important we continue to remember for the benefit of the youth, such as these young men and women from the Civil Air Patrol. It's incumbent upon each and every one of us to teach our youth about the past in such a way that they appreciate the value of service to others in whatever form that takes. Let's not forget those service members who are currently serving right now and serving our nation and our state, many of whom are deployed across the globe at this very moment, away from family and friends. Let's remember their sacrifice and that of their loved ones. I spoke a moment ago about the youth of this Civil Air Patrol. You should know that they also celebrate an anniversary. The Civil Air Patrol was formed only 6 days prior to the attack of Pearl Harbor. Today, youth such as this learn membership and the value of selfless service. Several cadets were here yesterday and laid the wreaths that you see. As they laid those, they saluted each one of those headstones as a small way to say thank you. And speaking of today's youth, I've heard comments in the past about the current generation, and many worry about the future of our country in the current young generation's hands. I remember my grandfather having the same worry about my generation. You know, I have a different perspective than some, and after meeting some amazing American airmen, soldiers, cadets such as these, high school kids, college kids, I believe our future is in very capable hands. Our country will remain great so long as we teach our youth about the past and the value of self-sacrifice and service to others in whatever form that takes. I want to say thank you to those who braved yesterday's weather to come out and lay these wreaths. I want to say thank you to each person who purchased this wreath and sponsored this program, because without that, this can't happen. And I also want to say thank you for braving this weather again today, and I appreciate you coming out. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. And now the Voices Squadron cadets will place special wreaths for each of the U.S. services. Cadet Hibbard will place a wreath in honor of the U.S. Army. Cadet Austinson will place a wreath in honor of the U.S. Air Force. Bryant will place a wreath in honor of the U.S. Navy. Cadet Pittman will place a wreath in honor of the U.S. Marine Corps. Cadet Rouse will place a wreath in honor of the U.S. Merchant Marines. And Cadet Hibbard will place a wreath in honor of the U.S. Coast Guard. Cadet Marshall will place a wreath in honor of those who are still unaccounted for or missing in action and prisoners of war.
Present oath.
This concludes our program for this year. Thank you all for attending and coming out today.